So here we are, episode 37 of the Two Russells podcast, and some lovely feedback from last week. What an incredible story. Russell, since then, I've been Googling GoldenEye Villa in the Bahamas. I've been looking at Simon Cowell's properties. I've been looking at One Hyde Park. I'm going to get a job in Iceland so I can get some investment. I mean,
another
incredible
journey, and one of challenge and adversity. You know, fancy thinking the streets of Barbados are paved with gold, going along, earning a fortune, seemingly being, what did he say, a year away from being a multimillionaire, then turning up one day at the gates of the development that you've been working on for a few years to find that it's closed, it's gone out of business, and you haven't got a job anymore.
Yeah, and another guest who started in that cut and thrust of Foxtons, which was interesting to unpick that part of the story. And I was really pleased to hear, and I know you will be, Russell, because deep down you do love high street estate agents. It's a business that is expanding and growing and wedded to offices.
Look, we can expand on that. My view on such things, I think there's absolutely a place for high street estate agency. I definitely don't think the high street estate agency is dead. And funnily enough, when it comes to talking to our next guest, that might be relevant, actually.
Definitely. And I was very interested in Jeff saying that they are exchanging contracts in 8 weeks, which will also be very much of interest to our next guest. And you and Gemma, our next guest, go back an awful long way, Russell. So I'm going to let you do the introduction.
Yeah, so let me introduce you, everybody, to Gemma Young. So Gemma Young is the CEO and co-founder of Movely, which is a business, I'm sure, Gemma, that you will expand upon in terms of its description. But yeah, we go way back to the days of online estate agency. Do you remember when we were like...
The days have passed.
Days have passed. Well, yeah, the days of passed and have passed for sure, particularly for most that have gone bust, actually, since. We were kind of ferrets fighting in the same sack, I think it's fair to say, weren't we? Back in kind of 2014, 15, 16, 17. So you founded a business called Settled, which was, let's talk about that actually. We want to talk about background and you and kind of, you know, where you come from, a family and so on.
You didn't just start Settled, did you? Because you were 2004, you were beavering away with your hot box at Connell's, wasn't it?
Wow, yeah.
And obviously there is another particularly large corporation beginning with G that we want to talk about. But the Settled thing was not quite the same as other online estate agencies. You were very big, and this takes us to where you are now in Movely, very big on tech.
Yeah, we were. Absolutely.
So that was your philosophy, that effectively moving home could be done. I mean, is it fair to say almost at the click of a mouse, do you think?
I don't think it's obviously ever that simple. I thought at the time, and still do today, that a proportion of the market can be helped to sell their own homes with software and with some kind of software help. And obviously things have moved on quite a lot since then. We've seen, I think you and me both kind of came up in the time of Purple Bricks. And Bricks...
We were before Purple Bricks.
Okay.
I just have to point that out. We were before Purple Bricks. Purple Bricks copied us, effectively. So did Settle...
They're still going.
Yeah, no, they are, just about. Did Settle fail?
Good question. Yeah, in a way. I mean, I went through 8 years of that business. It was I put everything into it, raised quite a lot of venture capital, as I think you probably did with EU.
And it was you just on your own, wasn't it? You didn't have a co-founder.
I did have a co-founder. That's a whole other story, because that was my brother. So
yes,
we actually co-founded the business.
But he was pretty invisible, wasn't he?
Well, he was there for 4 years, and it went on for 8, really up until COVID times, you know, when we were furloughing people and that kind of crazy time. So we kind of closed out the business, although I did take the IP, because I thought I was done, honestly, with this sector, but I thought that would be handy if I changed my mind. So
the technology you wanted to transfer, because you still had faith in the fact that tech is a solution to some of the problems that exist in the moving process.
I did have faith, although when Settled came to a close, I was pretty convinced that was my time done in property.
In property, or as an entrepreneur?
Well, probably that as well. Yeah, I mean...
You lost a lot of money. I haven't looked at the accounts, but we lost a lot of investors' money.
How much?
We raised 6 million for that business. We got to the point at the end where we had money left in the bank, and we made a decision that this was not going to the heights that we had hoped. And ultimately, my view at that point was there are bigger opportunities in supporting existing estate agency businesses with their transactions. So,
and we'll move on to the Movely philosophy in a sec, which obviously is the business that now you run, and you're expanding, and it seems to be going great guns. But there's a Google background, which I think is highly relevant in terms of your position there, your tenure there. You want to tell us a little bit about that in terms of what you did at Google, how long you were there for?
Yeah, I mean, Google was.
So you're a Googler.
I still think I'm a Googler. Yes, it doesn't ever leave you, although it's changed obviously there so much. I joined there in 2006, right? And at that point, there were about 100 of us in the UK. I remember going out.
Do you remember what employee number you were?
I don't. Although they used to have an internal thing where you could find out what percentage you were in. I was in like the top kind of 3%.
Wow.
And yeah, I spent an amazing 8 years there. It went on an incredible journey, and I've still got a lot of friends who are.
And what was your role
there? I think I had a new role every single year because of the pace. I think that's why, as an entrepreneur, I was very, very happy there, because I felt like everything was changing.
There was always a new big shiny thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But honestly,
were you based in London? Were you in London? Or
I was all over the place. So I started in the UK. I was in San Francisco. I ended one of my last roles there was actually in Africa. So it was incredibly varied, rewarding, honestly magical. And I think it's an amazing company.
Why did you leave?
This is going to sound cheesy, but I really felt connected to property, and I was seeing things go wrong. And I felt, perhaps because I'd been an estate agent, and my brother, who I co-founded, settled with, he'd been a mortgage advisor. My dad's in the industry. My mum had worked in an estate agency. So we felt maybe with the kind of digital and the property background, maybe we could have some influence and help with the kind of tech, the prop tech side.
So perfect ingredients, isn't it? You've been an estate agent, you've gone to Google, you think, right, let's put those two together.
And you saw that the process, or maybe even the industry, was broken?
Well, at that time, Rightmove and Zoopla existed, and so there was a lot of online searching, but a lot of the processes were still pretty broken. They still are. We're all still working to improve them. But when you think about the fact that you offer on a house and only 2 in 3 times that will actually close, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And in other countries that doesn't happen like that. So that's always been and continues to be the thing that I would love to
So you're determined to fix the bits that are broken, which brings us on to Movely. So tell us what Movely is.
Movely basically is a digital process that wraps around the whole transaction. Mm-hmm. So we've started, you'll have had people talk about and heard of obviously all the material information requirements that came out. Quite honestly, we knew that was an opportunity for us to build a quite nice product, getting upstream in the transaction and then help everything improve downstream. And the ultimate dream is just to make it, make the success rates when you offer a home 99%.
Okay.
And we've done some great stuff to get there.
Talk us through some of the steps that technology, your technology, and it's proprietary technology, is yours, right? Yeah. You're not nicked it from anywhere. It's not plugging in. It's yours.
Yeah.
Talk us through some of the steps that your platform looks after that otherwise the estate agent or the conveyancer has to do, but actually in reality they probably don't do because it's manual.
So it's the upfront compliance stuff. It's gathering material information requirements came out, I think, now coming up to a couple of years ago now.
In 3 steps, right?
Yeah.
And you've got ABC, and then we've had all the national trading stuff getting kind of pulled back.
Recent announcements, yes. Yeah. So just for those that don't know, in the last few days, it's gone from being, so the regulations regarding upfront information have gone from being looked after by a small broom cupboard in Wales and a trading standards office to now the Competition and Markets Authority. But, and I'm sure you'll reflect this, we should be at great pains to say that if there's estate agents now sitting there thinking, oh, I don't have to worry about it anymore, the regs still exist. It's just that they're being policed arguably actually by an entity with even more teeth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I guess coming full circle back to my journey with Settled, I'd got to the point where I wanted to do this transformation work. My route in at that point was, let's build an online software agent and then we'll start and we'll go through the process. I'd lost hope that online would grow to that level in terms of an agency platform. I think people want agents on the high street. And Purple Bricks, and they want people. Purple Bricks ultimately is a people business.
Yep.
You know, you've got
Enabled by
Nested,
tech, yeah.
you've got other, you know, forms. They're all people businesses, and people do want that. But what they don't want is bad transactions. So when we saw that this compliance requirement was coming in, it was, for me, okay, this is a chance to sort something, help upstream across all estate agents, and then we continue through the whole journey and hopefully make a difference in their transactions.
So for those that don't know, give us an example of some of the upfront information that is required. And let's be clear, is to the benefit of the agent to display that information up front, benefit to the consumer as a buyer, knowing that they're getting into something where that information is displayed up front, better for the seller in that they know, therefore, that the person that's agreed to buy their property is not going to pull out because of something that pops up in the conveyance 8 weeks later. Better for the conveyancer because they have all that information packaged. And by the way, I'm not selling this on behalf of Movely, but it's pretty obvious that if you're going to buy something of some magnitude in terms of value, whether it's a car or, you know, a business or a property, you want the stuff up front. So what sort of stuff is contained in A, B, and C that you would look after as Movely in terms of gathering up front? So tenure, for instance, is one of those things. Construction, disputes, EPC, obviously. What else? Any other things that?
Yeah, it goes all the way from information like that through to legal restricted covenants. So, you know, is there a reason? If I'm a buyer looking at this house and there's a reason why it's just not suited to me, I'd rather know that up front. So it gathers all of that, all of that information fairly automatically. So agents don't have to do much. They literally kind of click 3 times and it's done.
So do you think it's getting towards what I would call almost an electronic logbook, almost like an electronic service history of that property?
You don't want to say the HIPS word,
no.
do you?
Hey, look, do you know what? No, I think HIPS, I mean, look,
great place.
You might have a different view.
No.
When you were running Spices.
We spent a lot of money on that.
I think HIPS were a wonderful thing. They were just completely, they were executed in such a bad way by government and then by the industry that they were deemed not to be valuable, particularly because a lot of the information was taken out of the HIP, right? So lots of things were taken out.
And especially it wasn't electronic. We started with
So,
First Title and David Thorpe and something called Smart Move that was a massive folder of every single thing for the property.
So what happens if someone refers to what you're doing as an e-HIP? Is that what you are?
Yeah, I mean, you don't get a survey with the work that we're doing. The industry is moving that way, not just because of the work we're doing. The government is really supportive of having data up front because they know that actually if we fix some of this stuff and fix some of these fall through rates, the country would make more money. Yeah. So yes, they're interested.
More stamps, yeah.
And it's an emotional process. And if the largest reason things fall through is because data emerges and buyers pull out. So,
or because of the length of time also that it takes,
which also
and people
contributes
get
100%.
bored and frustrated.
Exactly.
I'm interested in going back, not about the mechanics of what Movely does, but why you've gone back into business again. So you've gone into Settled, £6 million of investment. You're working with your brother. Maybe that's getting tenuous and tension because you're working together. I don't know. You've got to ring an investor and go, that's it. Sorry, it's not going to come. Money's not going to come back. And you could go off and do something else, but you decide to brush yourself off and after a period of reflection, open another business. What's driven you to do that?
I mean, honestly, that time was a pretty dark time for me because I think anybody who runs or owns a business will know that they are kind of, sometimes their identity is that business. And so when it fails, you feel like a failure. And that at that time, I just had my first child. Just coming out of COVID, it had been a crazy time for the whole industry anyway. And I was really broken.
Were you depressed?
I was anxious. I was, I think over the course of time, I just put so much energy in, and then I had a newborn and sleepless nights to also go alongside this, and ultimately could see that
And no
we
income.
were 8 years into the business, and we'd pivoted into COVID, which I think was the right thing, but you need to then build up if you're going to raise again once you get on the VC kind of
treadmill.
train. Yes. And it just wasn't right. So I found that really hard. And I remember speaking to another founder friend at the time, just saying, that's it. I'm not a founder. I'm not a good boss.
Well, you think you didn't have it in you?
I didn't, no. I lost all my confidence. I'm like not a good boss. My strategy isn't right, all of that. And then I met my now co-founder, a guy called Ed Molyneux. And I remember having this, we shared the same passion for what is needed in this industry.
Just tell us about Ed's background, because it's quite an interesting one.
Well, he was originally a kind of Harrier fighter pilot.
Right.
And
how did you meet? Sorry, what?
Yeah.
How does that?
How
happen?
did we meet?
Yeah,
we were in the home buying and selling group. We were basically working with a lot of people. Yes,
Group,
yeah. And I'd been in that for years, and honestly, I think anybody in it just knew that it was kind of a bit of group counselling for people who were.
I was in it. I didn't have a lot of faith in it after I think the fourth meeting, but yeah.
But Ed had joined at one point, and he's got a tech background, and he'd built quite a big business. He built a company called Free Agent, which is actually not anything to do with property. It's a accounting software, and he'd done very well, and he'd sold that to Royal Bank of Scotland, and he was kind of working in his earn out for that business, and we met and shared a very similar passion, and then we ended up talking about my vision, because I almost wanted someone to do it because it wasn't going to be me at that point. And I remember here's
my baby, run with it.
Somebody fix this, and you're incredibly good and technical. And he was building something which has become incredibly influential in the industry now, which is called the Property Data Trust Framework. Very sexy name, but ultimately it's like open banking for this sector. And I knew that was what was needed, so I was talking to him about all of those things. And I remember he's based in Scotland. We had a Zoom call, and he said, "I'm going to fly down tomorrow. Can you meet me?" That would have been cool. And then we met, and we started talking. And I said to him, "I'm broken. I don't think I can do this." And he said, "Well, this vision is huge, and I think we should do this."
And other than Ed, or maybe it was only Ed, did you reach out anywhere else for help and support? And did you, or just was it an inner belief that I can do this?
At that time, I didn't think. I genuinely didn't think. And I said to Ed, I don't think. And he said, let's just see where it goes. Let's see where all of the kind of upfront material information goes. We'll build an amazing product for that. And then it was just like kind of slowly one foot and step in front of the other. And
then you found yourself getting consumed again.
I found myself. But honestly, there was a period where, because you'll know what this was like at eMove times, especially in consumer businesses, you spend so much time trying to like market and win customers, and it's exhausting. And what I knew I needed to feel in order to do this next business was the pull of the need. And the only reason I thought that might happen was because there were these new compliance requirements, right? I'm not particularly excited about compliance, but I am excited about what is possible when you start this way and go that way.
So how was your first days back in agency? Let's go back to there.
I loved working in agency. We were a small team.
You were lettings, were you?
So
we did
sales. Yeah. I think we're about 6 of us in our office, and I'm 21. We're all a young
First job,
team.
pretty much, or
Yeah, straight out of uni.
What was the business?
it's
It was Connell's.
Connell's, right? Okay.
It was Connell's. And I remember the phone would ring and we'd all like fight
jump
to,
for it.
like,
Yeah.
pick up the phone, and targets, and that kind of early excitement for this industry.
And I've just got this vision of then going to Google and in every meeting almost saying, what can we do for the property sector? What can we do for the property sector? What can we do for the property sector? Is that just my little dream, or was it always just whirring away in the back of your mind?
I think it was whirring away, but it was honestly, at that time, I remember we were, this is ages all of us, but it was when, we were getting into internet connections, and you remember the sound that would, you do,
On the modem.
I just remember.
My dad's still on
that.
dial-up.
And we would, go into like chat rooms, and it was like, oh my God, I can speak to somebody who is like in Costa Rica, and like forget how mind blowing that was. And then rolled forward, a few more years, and I got the chance to go and work at Google, but it was still very early then. I remember speaking to lots of different companies. I remember a big kind of prominent UK retailer, and we were talking to them about you should probably put some stuff online, and they had a catalogue that would go out. You remember who this was? I think they'd have like a yearly massive catalogue that would go out. And they were, really reluctant to.
It's never going to be a thing.
This is not going to be a thing.
Yeah, it's not going to be a thing.
So it was every industry was going through that change, really.
We had, I think, about 267 offices at the time, and a lady by the name of Katrina Hargreaves, who was the CEO's PA, her part of her job every day. Once a week, everyone sent a CD in for her to upload all the properties to the web. That was it. That was loading.
And in the scheme of
to the
things,
web.
all of this is not that long ago.
Yeah.
Can I get a bit personal?
I'm going to take a sip of water.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Because that's what we do here, isn't it, Mr. Jervis?
Definitely, yeah.
So you've talked a lot about, you've been an estate agent. You've found a business based on technology to solve a problem that absolutely clearly exists in the industry. It doesn't go so well. You end up in a dark place. Ed helps pick you up, and maybe others, whoever might have been supporting you at the time. But then you become a mother. So you've got 2 children now, right? Obviously, when we really knew each other back in the day, you were you didn't. And I make no apology for this question, by the way, because some people will now shout at the podcast at the screen or their earpods and say, oh, you can't ask questions like that. But I'm going to anyway, because I still am of the belief that men and women are different in some respects. Not that they have a different value, but they are different in terms of what they want, how they operate, their psychology. So my question, now I give you a long run up, did motherhood change you? Has it changed you in terms of how you view business, and in particular being an entrepreneur and things like risk? And then the follow-up question after that, has it changed you? Has it changed your outlook? How do you juggle it? Because that is where women have a massive disadvantage, just because of their maternal approach to kids, that I just don't think, and again, kill me if you like, I just don't think exists to the same extent in dads.
A few years ago, I would have challenged you on that, and that was
Before you had kids.
Yeah, I've got 2 boys, and even, talk about gender differences. Even seeing how different my boys are than girls their age, I'm like, holy shit! They are.
It's just there, right?
No matter how much I have encouraged kind of gender neutral toys, they love their cars, they love building things. So honestly, it's blown me away, because I've always considered myself quite a feminist. I've always, wanted a really equal relationship. I've always thought I'll be a career woman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I'm not for a second saying men and women are not equal in terms of value. I'm just saying that we operate differently.
We are different. And that is...
So how does that manifest itself now in terms of you're a mother, and you've been through the risk reward, raise money, want to be an entrepreneur, rah 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 thing. Has having kids, I don't want to put words in your mouth, has it made you more cautious, or has it made you more
averse,
determined?
yeah.
No, but it could make you more determined. I mean, I can just tell you, I've got 4 kids. My 3 girls are still teenagers. My son's a bit older. Everything I do is to make sure I support them and my wife financially, but also so there's a legacy, but also to build memories so that I think I'm a good dad, so I can pass down, I mean, believe it or not, and some might think this is horrifying, my philosophies, my opinions, my teachings, my learnings to my kids. Yes, God help them. I take that as a huge responsibility, which is one of the main reasons that I still strive to be a business person, an entrepreneur. So
it's the role model, isn't it?
What's the change?
Well, picking up on what you've just said, I think for me, I'm very lucky to have a husband that he's very career focused as well, but he's also got a normal job, and therefore me going off on my entrepreneurial journey and not, you take years where you're not getting paid well and you're not saving, and in a way, this is kind of probably controversial, but in a way that's easier as a woman. We don't. The reason why I say that, and it's funny because I've got kind of close guy friends, and we've had some conversations about this, guy friends who are founders as well. The financial burden often, if you're in a relationship, sits more with the man.
Yeah.
I feel like sick that I've just said that out loud, but like it's what I see in my male friends. And then when I hear them talking about the pressure that they take on themselves, I realise I feel very grounded to have a husband that earns well and very safe because of that, and more able to take risks because he's kind of got some of that.
Got the mortgage covered.
Yeah. And I'm I contribute, and I always have, but the fact that he's got a normal job and I'm an entrepreneur, like it gives me that balance and gives me that grounding. And I don't feel as much financial pressure, I think, as my male friends do. So it's been interesting. We've been talking about that quite recently.
Yeah, but I don't think it's not feminist or anti-feminist to say that in many, if not most relationships, that's the case. Because, of course, look, I think anyone that thinks that the woman shouldn't earn more is, a barbarian, frankly. So no one's suggesting that. But I guess what we're talking about is just, look, what seems to be prevalent, what seems to be traditional, doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's just, I'm afraid, things can just be the way they are. Right?
And there are lots of exceptions to that. I mean, like my best friend I've got actually like female friends who are the breadwinners in their house. But then actually what happens is when shit hits the fan and somebody's got to go and pick up the kids, it often has to be the one who isn't the main breadwinner, because that's how it plays out. So in those cases, like it's non-specific to gender.
But this is where the conflict is, because I still think that the maternal pull in a woman is clearly more than in a man. So what I'm trying to articulate here is that, particularly if you're the main breadwinner or you're the busy entrepreneur, you are the one most likely to feel or sense something in terms of a necessity for the kids, or you probably, even if you were earning more than your other half, I actually bet that you would be the one that would still be the one that would run to pick the kids up if there was a problem or whatever. I just think that's the challenge that women have. And again, I say this with no agenda and no judgment.
I see that changing quite a bit. But
no, I hope. But I just think there's a reality. I know lots and lots of women that do very, very well in life, financially and in every respect, but they still seem to me to be the responsible one, in the main, not entirely, when it comes to the kids. And that's hard. Right? So that was my second question. How do you juggle that?
So there's a lot of research that's been done into when you first have a newborn and sleeping. So basically, I found this to be true, that when we first had our son, my husband could like sleep through anything,
all the noise,
right, and my sleep has fundamentally changed since I've had children,
because I
am so
you're
biologically, and we talked about this, like I'm so biologically in tune with their needs. And that is, I think, the difference.
Yeah.
That was the most stark realization of our differences. Like, I think if you go back to, ancient times when men were hunter-gatherers, and there are inherent behaviors in us biologically that cause us to behave in certain ways and feel pressure. So yes, I do.
You agree?
I do agree.
So it's instinctive.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm coming to, and it comes back to a women in estate agency kind of trope, I suppose. That the Gemma Youngs, the Verona Frankishes, the Kirsty Franks of this world. It's harder. It's harder for you to be senior women in property. It's harder for you to be entrepreneurs because you're women.
That behavioural difference is not just something that happens within a family, right? The empathy and compassion that I think perhaps are more likely to be kind of feminine traits are incredible for business. And so, yes, you could deduce, okay, like, well, if there's childcare responsibilities, that might emotionally fall more on the woman. But ultimately, if you apply those wonderful empathetic traits in business, I think you get a more well-rounded business, and that's incredibly important.
Well, there's evidence to say that the more women there are on a board, the more successful that business is.
Yeah. So talking of business and back to that, what's next for Movely? So where do you see the next 18 months taking us up to 2027? So where would you hope to see the next 18 months of Movely?
We're kind of very much working with lots of estate agents now.
And when you say we, how many people are now in the business?
We're quite a small team. So one of the things that I'm quite passionate about is AI. And I think it's a really exciting time to be building businesses, quite a scary time as well. But I think we would be a much bigger person business if it wasn't for the amount that we leverage AI. And I think that we're building in that environment where, for example, there was a time late last year where I was like, right, I'm going to hire some commercial, and Ed and I were literally like, right, let's just hire because the opportunity is here. And we ended up not actually hiring anyone in that space. So we don't have anybody dedicated in that space. And that's because if we stay close to what is possible to do with the tools that are out there, we can actually grow a business and keep it very kind of lean. Okay. But yeah, in terms of what's next, we just had actually the results back from the pilot that we did with Connells, for full circle, nothing to do with me having worked there 20 years ago. And basically what we've been working on is something called Digital Sale Ready, which is like sale ready, but digital. Yep. See what we did there?
Like a hip.
Yep.
Like a hip, a digital hip.
Full circle.
Me too. And so we're really, honestly, this is what I'm here for. This is what I've been waiting for, is like, how do we impact transactions, weave them all together? So the work that we've been doing has reduced fall through rates. So let's cut them almost in half.
Brilliant.
Which
to a company of that size or any size is going to be a substantial amount to the P&L.
That's direct to the P&L.
Yeah. So we are excited to basically bring that to the rest of the market. Transaction times are down significantly.
So the money gets banked quicker and more
money gets banked quicker. But yeah, that cut of fall through rates has just been something that I've wanted to have an impact on. So we want to roll that out to the rest of the market. So with agents who have conveyancers that they already work with, so we very much pull those businesses together. We connect them. So an agent who's already working with a conveyancer or might want to do conveyancing, we get all of the data, they're all in one place, and then everything can just flow more seamlessly. Fantastic. So that's going to be big on our agenda.
So how many agents would be signed up to Movely at the moment?
Hundreds.
Hundreds.
Yeah.
So you might actually be a prop tech that isn't just a solution trying to find a problem. I think you've actually found a real problem to solve.
That's why I'm happy. I mean, honestly, that's what I talked about. The previous, the push of, right, how do we find customers? How do we acquire? How much do we spend? To now you know, we're a supplier in this industry in a way, but I just feel like I want to be the partner for any agent or conveyancer who's going on this journey, to make things better.
I'm slightly out of touch, but I would have always worked on 25 to 30% abort rate, as we would have called it. What rate would you work as the norm? And that's dropping by 50%. So what would you see as the norm abort rate for the industry?
My goal would be a 5% abort rate.
And where do you see it?
From about 30?
Yeah.
Which is
Is it
roughly
still
what the
30?
industry average is.
Still 30, yeah.
Well, it's probably worse now than it's ever been because transaction times are longer now than they were 5 years ago.
And that's going to have just such a
the crazy
massive
thing.
impact to
Bottom
businesses.
line, I mean, if Connells or a Spicer's or a Beresford's or whoever,
Wilford's.
Wilford's or lots and lots of other businesses are available, if they actually applied your statistics, your data, as in the outcome of that pilot, to their numbers, I mean, the outcome in terms of that bottom line P&L improvement is millions and millions and millions of
Yes, it
pounds.
is, yeah.
Millions and millions of pounds.
And we're actually, funny enough, I think we're going to build a calculator to
Demonstrate that.
work this out, because
So input your fall through
Yeah.
rate. This is what we think it's going to be based on
exactly
our pilot.
that fall through rates. There's another big. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on actually customer charging, but so with Movely you can charge for onboarding and upfront compliance, and we've had actually the majority of our agents who sign up now will choose to charge on instruction.
Yeah.
So they'll charge on the AML and the material information. So they're making those nice little margin up front regardless of what happens. But it starts there, and then it's even, the buyers will be encouraged obviously to come on and do their onboarding, and then they'll see the opportunity to connect with the agent's preferred legal supplier. So it's kind of over a number of strands that you're closing more houses, you're getting more commission, you're also getting more legal.
It's a no-brainer.
Well,
it's a no-brainer.
It will absolutely revolutionise people's P&Ls. It will relieve a lot of stress for purchasers, vendors, and just generally help the whole industry move forward. Gemma, it's been
I hope so.
absolutely fascinating. And how do people get in contact with you? LinkedIn or via Movely website? What's the best way to reach out to you if you want to know more?
Movely website, hello@movely.com. Find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, any of those ways.
And outside of Movely, you're also getting involved in other things. You were telling us you're off to a property academy event, and you're keeping yourself extremely busy.
Yeah, I'm off. I'm actually off after this.
But you're also fraternising with Simon Weil. Can I caution against doing that?
Yeah.
And under all circumstances.
We haven't had Simon on yet, so maybe that's a call to action for Mr. Weil to come on the two Russells.
We'll invite him soon.
But for now, Gemma, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your journey. Amazing, Russell. Another fascinating
Thank you for having
podcast.
me.
Fascinating. And look, I'm a big cynic on prop tech. This is the exception.
Oh, wow.
Well, there we
Seriously.
go. A big
Thank
endorsement.
you. I
So that's
appreciate
it.
that.
Episode 37 in the can. Thank you for listening. Please do press the follow, subscribe, and add any comments in and share it with your friends. We've got some more amazing guests coming up as we get to 38, 39 and episode 40, which Russell's promised to take me out for lunch after we do episode 40.
40 could be an interesting episode.
Well, he sounds like a very interesting man, and one that I'm absolutely looking forward to, which takes us slightly away from property and into the world of business. But for now, that's all, and it's good night from me.
And it's good night from him.
Goodbye.